I've been wondering where this guy's been. The only time I spoke anything about him was this possibility of him, being ousted or someone replacing him as a deputy director of the FBI. Well, those things are brewing, and there's stories talking about how both Kash Patel and Dan Bongino just might be under fire.
I got to ask you about this Fox News report by Jackie Henrich, the White House correspondent, who says you and Kash are under fire, political fire, that she reports the White House, Pam Bondi, Todd Blanchard, deputy, have no confidence in Kash Patel, citing one source. Pam in particular cannot stand him, Blanche either, they said, referring to Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche. Bondi and Blanche denied the characterization. White House officials denied any plans to remove Director Patel. But the headline is that knives are out for Kash Patel. It ends with something about you, Dan, saying 3 sources also point out Dan Bongino's days are more likely numbered than Patel's, as he threatened to quit amid fallout from the Epstein feud with Bondi. I want to give you a chance to comment on those 2 pieces.
Megyn, I don't even know. So just to be clear, I've read the report. I spoke to Jackie. Everyone on the record you just cited, on the record, said the exact opposite. You can read the report yourself. So just to be clear, an off the record person who was not willing to put their name to any of this, who may not like what the director and I are doing here, off the record, said, wow, these guys are in a lot of trouble. On the record, everyone from the president to Todd to Pam to everyone else says the exact opposite. So your story, not you, but the story's what? Knives are, where are the knives? Who's holding the knives? The knives are out?
It's a nice little trick there that Dan Bongino tried to play as far as the question that Megyn Kelly asked him about this report about the FBI potentially having he and Kash Patel on thin ice. His answer so far was, first off, he didn't address anything about their little dust up with the Epstein files and why he suddenly disappeared and no one's heard anything from him for a while. But still, the question about whether or not they're on thin ice, and he said, well, there's on the record people and there's off the record people talking about it. When they're on the record, they say doing great things, but when they're off the record, they say things like, we're on thin ice, and these folks that are in control of our positions in our lives, that they can't stand us and they don't like the way that we've been doing things. Well, bro, that's how that would work. It's, when you're on the record, you say the things that's more palatable to society, that's more palatable to the leadership that don't want you to know that there's potentially some problems going on. I'm not saying there is, but that's not really an excuse. If anybody who's being a whistleblower or is talking anonymously, they're not going to be on the record and go, hey, my name is Jim Jones, and I tell you what, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, they're in trouble, because guess what will happen to Jim Jones? I don't know why I brought the name Jim Jones. That's random. But still, Dan Bongino was not done trying to duck this story and his anger surrounding it.
We have had epic disclosures in the transparency front on things you never would have seen. If the White House was unhappy and President Trump was unhappy, you and I have known the president a long time. You really believe the president's not just going to call it? Just to be clear, I don't mean to get personal, but you know the president like I do. Do you think he's the type to not call you? So I'm a little skeptical of garbage reporting about unnamed sources who may not like what I just told you, who are saying, oh my gosh, the knives are out, when everybody on the record is saying, what are you talking about? Everything's going great.
Mm-hmm. President Trump is not usually shy when he's unhappy with a staffer. Yeah.
I'm sorry. It doesn't make any sense. First of all, he said that some of their accomplishments, he went through a list of accomplishments that they've had. And he said, we've had these this is the quote, epic disclosures of transparency. Dan Bongino, deputy director of the FBI, said the FBI under Kash Patel during this huge Jeffrey Epstein cover-up said that they've got epic disclosures of transparency. When did we see those epic disclosures of what kind of transparency with which case? With the Epstein files? Because that's completely getting covered up. Where are these epic disclosures of transparency? What I've seen is epic cover-ups, making sure no one sees anything that's happening. What I've seen is this Donald Trump's closest cabinet members, his administration, having secret meetings that excluded Dan Bongino's ass to talk about how they're going to respond to the Epstein files so they can continue to lie and make sure people stop talking about this. These epic disclosures of transparency somehow include the president going, why are you guys still talking about this? Jeffrey Epstein's deader than a dead doorknob. Why are we still talking about this? And then while people are outside, the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's child sex trafficking ring that included Donald Trump's name, when they're outside saying this is not a hoax, him going, this is fake. Nobody's talking to me about this. Of course I'd invite them in if they ever talk to me, but they're outside saying, invite us in. It's weird how there's no epic disclosures of transparency when we've seen nothing but cover-ups. Please stop listening to people when they're lying to you. So now that it's obvious that Dan Bongino is lying about epic disclosures of transparency, why should we believe anything else that he's saying? Which leads to the back end of what he was giving an excuse for. Megyn, you've known Donald Trump for a long time, Megyn? Do you think he wouldn't have called me if he was upset? Do you think he wouldn't have been so upset and called me? Well, Dan, if Donald Trump called you, here's the thought. I don't think you would have told us he called you and yelled at you. I feel like you wouldn't have made that public. They really think that everything they do and say, just because they say it non-public, Donald Trump didn't call me. Why would I believe you when you say he didn't call you? I don't know that he did, but why should I take your word for it? Because there's no way, if he did, you would come out and say, man, Donald Trump just tore me a new asshole. Man, he's so mad that I was upset about the evidence that I saw in those Epstein records. And he doesn't like that I was upset about it and had some kind of fight with Pam Bondi over it. Why would he come forward and publicly say that?